With Rich Rod coming back to Morgantown to coach the West Virginia Mountaineer football team and the roster overhaul that's taking place, it's very hard to predict how many games this team will win in 2025. But sometimes the best predictor of the future is the past. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to take a look at some past teams who have done similar roster overhauls and see just which one West Virginia may come the closest to. Will it be the 2023 Colorado Buffaloes, the 2024 Indiana Hoosiers, or maybe someone else? And that's what we're going to talk about and compare right after this word from one of our sponsors. Since 1931, the attorneys at Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner have been the voice for victims who have suffered serious injury or death. They have a fierce passion for truth and justice and a sincere compassion for those who have been wronged by others. Whether you have been in a car accident or fighting with an insurance company, or you or a loved one has suffered serious injury or death due to medical negligence, we will ensure your voice is heard loud and clear. Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner will ensure there is justice for all West Virginians because we are your lawyer, your voice. Visit us at yourlawyeryourvoice.com. What is up? Welcome to this episode of Couz's Corner, your home for top shelf college sports news and analysis centered around the West Virginia Mountaineers and the Big 12. Rich Rod is doing almost a complete roster overhaul this year, bringing in about 50 transfers out of the portal and losing a ton of players off of last year's team. They're returning only what? Coach Rod says 2 starters from last year's team. Technically, there's 4 or 5 guys on the roster that started games for West Virginia at some point in the last couple of years. But if you look at guys who finished last season as starters, he's right. There was only about 2, Rodney Gallagher and Jaheim White. But we're going to compare West Virginia's roster overhaul and turnaround and rebuild to some past teams, most notably the 2 that most people talk about the most, the 2023 Colorado Buffaloes, who finished 4-8 in year one of the Deion Sanders era, or the Indiana Hoosiers in year 1 of Coach Curt Cignetti, who went to the college football playoff and finished, 11 wins, I think, last year. Those are the 2 teams we're going to compare West Virginia to primarily. Which one is West Virginia more like? Are they more like the 2023 rebuild of the Colorado or the 2024 rebuild of Indiana? Well, first, let's start off looking at how many starters are returning from each team. West Virginia is bringing back what I say 2 that ended last year as starters. You could also, Nico Marchiol has some starting experience at West Virginia. We're talking about guys who started in Morgantown. Jaden Bray started a game or 2 last year before going out with an injury. And Edward Vestorinen started almost all of 2023 and then the first game of last season before going out in game 2 with an injury. So there are, a handful of guys that are returning that have starting experience for the Mountaineers. When you compare that to Indiana's 2024 team, they actually returned 14 starters from the team that went, I think they won 3 games the year prior, maybe 4. I don't remember their exact record. It's not really relevant, but nonetheless, they returned 14 starters. In Colorado in 2023 with Deion, they only returned about 5 as well. So they only returned a handful of starters from a team who went 1-11 the year before Deion got there. So in that regard, when you look at number of starters returning, they're more like Colorado. However, I would say starters from a team who went, 6-7 in West Virginia compared to 5 starters from a team who went 1-11, I give the edge to West Virginia there. All right. Indiana bringing in about 30 transfers, give or take. Now, when you research these transfer portal classes, each site sometimes gives slightly different numbers, but Indiana brought in about 30 transfers in 2024. 13 of those came with Curt Cignetti from James Madison, so that was a big help. And of those players, 13 of them were either redshirt juniors or seniors, which meant they had at least 4 years experience in college. Conversely, when you look at Colorado, 15 redshirt juniors or seniors brought in with Deion, including 9 guys who followed him from Jackson State, including Shedeur Sanders, who was first-round talent quarterback. Now, he didn't go in the first round of the NFL draft, but he had the talent to. And then when you look at, he fell for other reasons. And then also Travis Hunter, who arguably one of the greatest athletes we've seen in college football in many, many years. Those are 2 big pieces to bring with you from your previous stop. I mentioned Curt Cignetti bringing 13 with him from James Madison. A lot of those guys contributed to that college football playoff team last year. And when you look at what Rich Rod's doing, he's bringing, 6 guys with him from Jacksonville State, including Cam Vaughn at wide receiver, Fred Perry at safety, 2 guys who I think will make big impacts, along with Jacob Barrick, a tight end, and a few other guys. Derek Carter, the defensive back. That's 4 off the top of my head. So he's bringing in 6 guys. Now, there were already a couple guys that he coached in 2023 that had transferred to West Virginia last year. Xavier Bosley, the offensive lineman, and Kikora Tarnu, the defensive back. Now, those 2 guys, I guess arguably you could count those, but technically they're not part of this year's class. But as far as this year's transfer class, Rich Rod's bringing 6 guys with him from Jacksonville State compared to Deion's 9 from Jackson State. And Curt Cignetti's 13 from James Madison. So, again, West Virginia's slightly below both of those teams in the number of guys they're bringing over from their previous stops. But when you look at the number of seniors being brought in, now that's where I think West Virginia has a big advantage over these other 2. Indiana, I mentioned they brought in 13 redshirt juniors or seniors. Colorado brought in 15 redshirt juniors or seniors. West Virginia, 25. I counted 25 of their 50 transfers are either redshirt juniors or seniors. So Rich Rod's going out and getting grown men. He's going out and getting guys who have played a lot of football, whether at the FCS level, or the FBS level, some even at the Power 4 level. Guys that come to mind off the top of my head, Jamoy Robinson, the defensive end out of UTSA. Michael Coach Jr., the defensive back from Nevada. Just to name 2 off the top of my head. Chase Wilson, the linebacker from Colorado State. Jalen Knighton, the running back out of SMU on the offensive side of the ball. Jeffrey Weimer, a wide receiver from Idaho State, has a ton of experience. Those are just the guys off the top of my head. So in that regard, that is the one thing I think Coach Rod is doing here differently that may help him succeed in year 1 a little better than what Deion did in year 1. That is, he's bringing in a ton of guys who have a lot of experience, a ton of guys who are physically grown men at 22, 23, 24 years old, maybe even 25 in some cases for these 5th and 6th year guys, or 6th year guys. Now, the one area I'm most concerned about, though, and I feel like West Virginia is a little behind these other 2 on when you look at the offensive line. Now, Deion, when he took over 2023 at Colorado, they brought back about 2 starters from the previous year's offensive line. Now, again, it was an offensive line that wasn't very good, so take that with a grain of salt. But they at least had 2 starters returning that had played together. Indiana in 2024, 2 O-linemen who started the previous year, who have played together or had played together. West Virginia, starting O-lineman returning, a goose egg. I've talked about it multiple times on this show. That is my number 1 concern for this 2025 Mountaineer team is the offensive line. How can you get all these new offensive linemen to gel together? You have Landon Livingston, who may start at center. He has less than 100 snaps, I think it was, in his career. I'm doing that off memory, but it's not a ton. Xavier Bosley, I think, played about 25 snaps last year. Played sparingly. That's really about it, other than a little bit of spot duty from some other guys. But you lost all 5 starting offensive linemen, 2 of your top backups, and a guy who was expected to come in and compete for a starting spot, who was a freshman last year, Kyle Altuner. So you lost arguably your 8 top offensive linemen to either graduation or the portal if you're the Mountaineers. So Rich Rod was forced to go out and get a bunch of new faces. Walter Youngbear from Tulsa, probably the most well-known face of that group, along with some other guys. Now, some of these guys have Power 4 experience, but their number of snaps is not that high. So it's concerning to me. The level of experience on the offensive line at West Virginia is a major concern for me. Even though some of the guys are upperclassmen, some of them don't have a ton of experience, and it's a concern. I'm not going to lie. Carson Lee, the most recent addition, one who I expect to come in and contribute. He has a lot of experience at the group of 5 level. I mentioned Walter Youngbear, again, a ton of experience at the group of 5 level. But can they all gel together? That's going to be the huge question mark. Can these new faces on the Western offensive line gel together? So is West Virginia more like Colorado or more like Indiana. I don't know. It's kind of a toss-up. I would say they're somewhere in the middle. I'm not expecting them to go out and win 10 or 11 games and go to the college football playoff, but I also think they can do much better than 4-8. But I am concerned about the tough schedule West Virginia has to play, and I am concerned about the fact that they don't have a lot of offensive line experience returning. Now, upsides, a lot of seniors. They have veterans at quarterback like Nico and now Jalen Anderson, who they brought in from the portal. They have some really good skill level talent with Cam Vaughn, Jaheim White, Jalen Knighton, Jaden Bray that I really like. They have a new, exciting offensive coordinator in Zach Alley, who I think will be much more aggressive and be a lot more disruptive on the defensive side of the ball, which should hopefully force more turnovers. And West Virginia should be better defensively. And they have a new scheme. They have a new scheme that, that fast-paced read option spread that Coach Rod likes to run that's slightly different than what Coach Brown did with air raid-based stuff. And it's Coach Rod. He has a history of being able to develop talent. He has a history of being able to turn teams around. Look what he did at Jacksonville State. You want to take a look at that? Jacksonville State had 3 starters coming back on the O-line just going into last year. Now, it was Rich Rod's 3rd year with the program, but he had to replace a ton of guys. They only had 3 starters coming back on the O-line, but that's 3 out of 5. That's still an advantage. But he only returned 9 starters from the previous year's team, a team who went 9-4. So he lost a lot of good players off of a team who had success, including a quarterback, 2 running backs, his top 2 receivers, and 5 of his top 6 tacklers on defense. Yet they still went out and won the conference again and won a bowl game or made a bowl game, won a conference championship. So Rich Rod has shown that he can flip rosters through the portal. They had over 60 new players on that team at Jacksonville State, much like they're going to have this year in Morgantown, where they're going to have probably closer to 70 new players. So he's done it. Now, it was at a different level, but still, when you look at the resources, the teams he was playing against versus the resources he had, it should mimic what he's doing more at West Virginia. So I think it'll be somewhere in the middle of a 4-8 Colorado team from 2023, an 11-win Indiana team from 2024, and I look for West Virginia to win somewhere in the 6 to 8 game range, probably in 2025. But what do you think? Which team will West Virginia be more like? Will they be more like Colorado, or will they be closer to a 2024 Indiana? We don't know at this point, right? It's all a guessing game, but we can speculate, and we can use the past to try to predict the future, and I think there'll be more in the middle of both of those teams. But you let me know in the comment section what you think. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video if you thought I earned it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to turn on your notification bell to be notified of future uploads and future live streams I might do. I want to give a quick shout out to my VIP channel members of this episode: Daniel Gigax, Denny Allen, Shaggy of WV, S. Michael DeHart, and TS. To join that club, hit the join button below. If you don't see a join button on your device, there will be a join button on my channel homepage right beside my profile photo. There should also be one in the description of this video. You will get early access to some content if you sit at the club level, and all members get random shout-outs and get first dibs on comments during my live streams. And that being said, I appreciate you tuning into this episode. Don't forget my channel sponsors, Cats, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner, and the ones over here, Appalachia Digital. If you are looking to rebuild a website or get your current website found easier on Google, go to appalachiadigital.com/Couz. Let them know I sent you, and those fine folks over there will help you. They are the ones who designed my brand new website, WVSportsChat.com, which, by the way, you can go check out. You'll see the logo behind me. I appreciate you tuning into this episode. Have the top shelf day, and Q Country Roads.